So as far as being 10 years, I guess much hasn't changed, but plenty has. I mean, here we are sitting in the same location 10 years on, and there was many years where even, people that were very close to us probably didn't believe what we believed to have happened. But yeah, as far as it being the commemoration of Ray and Jennie at 10 years, how do you put it? I don't know. Just never would have believed that we'd still be fighting after so long. You just could never believe that we'd still be fighting for something that just seems so cut and dry, so black and white. We've never had anything in writing from the DPP, so it's not like they can give us a rundown of what they've reviewed from the police investigation and where the gaps were, or what, you just get a blanket. There's not enough burden of proof is the words they use. And it's frustrating because there's plenty of, the DPP are the prosecutors, let's face it, but there's plenty of people that are at that same level or in that professional world that don't agree with the DPP. But at the same time, we have people that are in that professional world, in that professional field, that also concur that there is enough burden of proof, there is enough evidence. And that was prior to even 2023. So now it feels like Rick has topped that cup up. He's poured the salt amongst the rocks, and we're still here 2 years later. So yeah, there's no words for it. It's just, people will go, that's the standard process. If you've never been into that process, you'll never understand how that feels from the secondary victim's point of view. It's our world is on hold until they deem otherwise.
10 years ago, the detective that was on the case, he was confident enough to write a report for the DPP to pursue a charge. So there's at least one detective or one team that believed that much, and that hierarchy cut it off at the DPP. Now they come back with like Dave said, a blanket no. But now that detective and that team are nowhere to be seen. They are not allowed on the case again. All that knowledge, that work that Detective Cleo did putting those pieces of the puzzle together, and then somebody's come past and just bumped the board. And now all those pieces are with him, essentially, with the fact of, with the exception of the actual evidence, which, to be honest, I actually don't know what physical evidence they had at that stage. Now there's a new team of detectives that have really got to rebuild the case without any input of Detective Cleo.
And it's similar with detectives after that as well, and prior. I think in the first 3 years there was at least 3 teams that went through it. So there's no carryover of, I'm sure there's carryover of knowledge and reports and all that sort of thing, but we all know, like, if there's particular detectives or investigators that are passionate about it and that are invested in it, if they're taken off, all their knowledge is gone.
What are your hopes in terms of people coming forward to talk about real things that have happened to them? What would your hope be, I guess, if they were listening to this, in terms of coming forward to help put the puzzle pieces together? Well,
we have had heaps, I think is the collective noun, heaps of people over the last 10 years that have come forward in that regard, some even very recently, plenty in the last few years, either that they've worked with Milne or are connected to him in some way, and very common opinions, different stories personally, but the character is very evident, and that's frustrating as far as the prosecution goes as well, because if those people have actually contacted Crime Stoppers or whatever, it doesn't go through to the keeper. But I'm sure if it went to the next level where the DPP is involved and they are looking for that sort of information, then there is plenty of people that would come forward and could come forward. Yeah. And that goes back to, this is my purely unsolicited opinion, but the DPP in particular, it's like they have some sort of intellectual bullying going on, because they say to us that there's not enough for a conviction. There's not enough to convince a jury. I can't tell you anyone that's heard even partial of the story of what happened out here that doesn't think that there's the possibility of conviction. If they have more behind that, which I know they do, clearly we don't share everything. Yeah. If they've got enough of a picture, enough of a puzzle to put together to a jury, and they still think that a jury wouldn't convict on the information they've got, who are they to say that? What, because they think that there's for whatever reason they think that that they haven't got enough of a picture to put together? I disagree. I think Judith Fordham put it absolutely succinctly on Under Investigation. She said that in her opinion, it's pretty much what she said. It should have been put to a jury for them to decide. I'm not saying that this case is simple, because clearly it's not. It is very unique. So it sort of feels like they just don't want to put the work or effort in. It would clearly be a very long court case. It would be a very arduous, long, expensive court case. So whether there's a factor in that, I don't know. Other people have suggested that they always say that there is no budget in those sectors, but we all know there is. Yeah. If you've got a list of 100 cases per year, I'm pretty sure Ray and Jennie's would be low priority from a budgetary sense. So there would be a pushback on that, I'm sure, absolutely sure. And other people have suggested it, like I said, professional people. Yeah. But I think we were talking about that last night, Rick. The fact is, Ray and Jennie were completely innocent victims. We were not talking about they've got involved in some clandestine bloody drug syndicate or gang wars or anything like that. They were completely innocent victims. Yeah. So why aren't they a priority? They should be the priority from police and DPP's point of view.
Yeah, just to expand on what Dave was saying about with the case when it does go to trial, I think one of the concerns would be the terrain and the location of what essentially maybe one or two crime scenes, definitely one and more than likely two. The jury needs to come up here and actually see on the ground that Ray did not run after Ella. For example, that's nearly in the improbable category. Yeah. And then to evidently, if the defence wants to go down that line, and then to rule out the possibility of him falling, stumbling, whatever, down that shaft, to take that off the table completely. The jury needs to be here for that. Yeah. So the logistical nightmare of that is something they may be concerned about, I don't know. It was proven to be a pivotal component of a case over in Cape York where they took the jury, well actually it was about 7 hours, up to Cape York to the murder scene and explained the terrain and where the witnesses were and what could and what couldn't have happened due to noise travelling through steep ravines that a satellite photo just does not appreciate.
Yeah.
You look around here during daylight hours, your visibility is maximum of 192 metres. Where was the supposed vehicle? The mysterious white Prado? Where was the two people that were talking? You can't hear anybody on tabletop or any of the other high features. You can't see them. So all that fictitious stuff needs to be explained to the jury, and they need to be taken on a tour to actually appreciate the full extent of the location.
Yeah. Yeah, because, obviously it's my first time out here, and I'd read about the terrain, but until you see it and walk it, particularly, it's so improbable that he's fallen down that hole. It's just, you'd have to try to do that really hard.
That's a good way of putting it.
I mean, that's the only way you could explain it. Like the Chris Dawson case, which was another case where I was really surprised as a listener, just as a casual listener, that they were able to convict without a body, and all on really largely circumstantial evidence. But that was a case that they ended up judge only, I believe, with no jury, because of, I think, all of the media publicity. That kind of, so it's a catch-22 because it just took off, didn't it, that one?
That is a good case, because Damien Loon was on the Under Investigation show, who was heavily involved in that case, and that's how he put it. He goes, "This is not a circumstantial brief. We have hard evidence," and that was again prior to Rick. So he considered they had enough hard evidence back then. More has been added. It's like you just bang your head against a brick wall for why it's what is the hold up. Their job is to put that together. Their job is to present that to a jury. All those inconsistencies, all those inaccuracies and all that sort of thing. And we all know what they are.
Like if you were to, just off the top of your head, and you're both, I'll let you do this, list some of those head scratches for me.
Every time Milne opens his mouth, there you go. No, well, here you go. Number one, here we are. We're sitting around the campfire. We have some other light as well. But if you walk over there, like literally 6 feet past that campfire, without your head torch on, you will not be able to see a thing. No. Like zero. No. Not in front of your face.
I'll illustrate that while you're still talking.
So there's no moon up tonight, which is what it was like over that weekend. There was no moon. So as soon as you walk past the light source, which in this case is Campfire, you cannot see where you're moving at all. Yet apparently someone managed to, so the sun goes down at 6:30, tonight, 6:30, and until between 3 and 4 in the morning. So what's that work out to? 8 or 9 hours. 8 or 9 hours out there, because that's the direction that he claims to have gone. 8 or 9 hours, and this is after 10 hours of daylight as well, so 18 hours total, out there prospecting alone. I mean, fuck me, seriously, like just, there's no words for it. It's so fucking ridiculous.
But then, what do you do after that?
Hey, oh yeah, and then
drive back. I just did that drive. You don't do that.
No,
no. That's the stupidest thing I've heard.
It's like you don't have to be you don't. He didn't have to be a liar. He just had to put just the most ridiculous fucking answer up, and they swallowed it. It defies logic, defies belief.
Well, just what you said then, Dave. How did he navigate back to camp that night?
Yeah.
So, 18 hours 10 hours daylight, fatigue, sun goes down, night time, 8 hours, whatever, 6 hours. What technology did he use to come back to camp? he wouldn't have had a beacon, so therefore he must have had a GPS or an electronic device such as an app, Trilobite perhaps, where he had a waypoint marked. He may have been recording his track. Has that stuff ever been accessed by police, with the exception of his GPS in his vehicle?
Yep.
He did admit to having 2 or 3 GPSs.
Mm.
Where are they? Have they ever?
They would be on.
Well, he has to get back to camp somehow.
Yeah.
There's no beacons. There's no white lights. So that's a.
So it's another inconsistency, because the only GPS locations that they have, or the GPS pings that they've got, is 10:27 p.m. here.
10:28 here and
10:17 at Payne's Fine.
So
two locations. So yeah, you're right. So you're out there, and there's another contradiction as well. Apparently, Ray and Jennie, who are completely countrified bushies, you can write up a report to say that Jennie potentially was under duress and couldn't find a way back to camp from up there, but apparently he can walk around in the middle of the fucking bush in complete darkness for 8-9 hours and miraculously make it back to camp. It's just, it's so, it's insulting. It is totally insulting. Yeah. And so the DPP, they're clearly just, city people, book people. I'm a book person, I'm not holding that against them, but, city people and all that sort of thing. Like Rick said before, bring them out here. Bring the jury out here. Let them sit right here, like we are right now, and go, look over there. Go and walk over there for 8 to 9 hours on your own, and then find your way back here. Because that's what they're suggesting he did.
And then drove what ended up being an extremely long, it took me, my trip today probably took 9.5 hours because I was stopping to take photos and all that sort of thing. But his trip, apparently, what was it? When I sat down and looked at it, he got back to Kwinana at 8:30, and he'd left here at 2 or 3, is what he said in the morning.
4 to 5.
Okay.
For a person that doesn't wear a watch.
Yeah.
That's a
15 hours.
15-hour trip. And he did say he stopped for a little nap at
2 hours.
Yeah, but there's still, to me, there's unaccounted time there, quite a bit. That's obviously one thing, but the behaviour of Ella, the way the rifle was found, the DNA at the top of the cigarettes at the top of the hole that he said he never went to, but had drawn a map to go there. It kind of just. It goes on and on for me, so I don't know how many of those you want to talk about, but any thoughts on that? It just seems like the story's been reverse engineered.
Probably one of the first inconsistencies that I've noticed was reading the transcripts was if he takes his rooftop tent off his vehicle and then puts it back on, I'm assuming that he lifts it off in the rafters or something. He has a mechanical setup at home. He would know that whether he has to back in or drive in to get that to fold to the appropriate side. I would probably even bet my bottom dollar that he leaves it on all the time, because they are not easy to take on or to take off and then put back on, especially by yourself. And being vertically challenged as he is would hinder that. So for him to say that, to come up here and go to set up his rooftop tent, but finds out that it opens on the side of the awning, so then he folds it back up and zips it up and then sleeps in the back of the vehicle, I find that a bit of a anomaly. But at the end of the day, did police ever check that? That's probably not, because at that stage there was no suspicions that there was anything wrong. So all those early mishaps, all those early discrepancies are lost chances.
And then as far as the DNA in the rooftop tent, so there was 2 pillowcases tested. I'm not sure, I don't think anything else in the coroner's report come out except for the pillowcases. So one had Jenny's DNA predominantly. I think there was a mixed sample other than that. And the other pillowcase had Jenny's DNA and Milne's DNA, not Ray's. So Ray's didn't factor into those two pillowcases. So that's in Ray and Jennie's rooftop tent. And when that come up in the inquest, his excuse was that he lent Jenny his pillow when they were on the drive up because she had a bad back. Which, you know, so they both parties. So Ray and Jennie left from Beverly, he left from Medina, and they've driven up here separately. So the first time they met was in Woburn, and then Payne's Fine. And it's like Ray and Jennie clearly had their own bedding. For one, why would you need to borrow someone else's pillow? For two, where on that trip did that happen? Like, you know, like, I'm sure, you know. So again, it's like every time there's a bit of evidence, there's just a lie thrown in to just, you know, offer a ulterior reality, let's call it. It's not even like, it just, like I said, it's not even a good lie. It's just a, you know, this is a possibility, a tiny little possibility.
The rifle's a good example. Oh, the shooting to warn off. Yeah. Tell us about that. Yeah.
So when I started the thought process into the early stages of this, before as I come up here, I started a list: admissions, forgets, and lies. Okay. And the more times I read the reports, the longer the list grew. And that was one of those admissions. Was he mentioned that he assisted helping set up the rooftop tent by passing the bedding up as well, which again is a justifiable reason. So he's offering a justifiable reason as to why his DNA is on something. Yeah. Same as the rifle shots. He said that there was 2 shots that day to justify, potentially in case a witness comes forward and says, oh yeah, at this time, at this place, I heard 2 rifle shots. Oh yeah, that's right, they shot at a cigarette packet. So he, in his mind, he may be thinking, I've justified that, I'm good to go. And that list just grew and grew and grew the more times I read the report.
Yeah. Interesting, in the ABC podcast, when they spoke to Milne's partner's son, and he had some text exchanges. Do you recall that? And it seemed as if, it was clear through those messages that Milne was very emotional and upset when he got home.
That's another thing that I think has been not missed, because it's probably, unless you were sitting through the inquest, you would have missed it because it's never come out otherwise. But so when Milne's partner was on the stand, she made a mention that Graeme was very, very upset when Ray was found down the hole, and when it was put to her, like when that was, and it was like, oh, when it was on the TV, when the person, you know, when the demonstration was on. And we all know, everyone knows, that was on the 8th of April. No one knew it was Ray. In fact, they actually said it couldn't possibly be Ray or Jenny because, you know, it appeared to be months or years old. Exactly. Yeah. And her statement on the stand was, I've never seen Graeme cry, and he cried that night watching the TV. So he was fucking upset because he was probably waiting for his doors and windows to come crashing in, was the reason he was upset. So then after that goes to what you were saying before, I'm sure he was in panic mode. He was probably trying to make everything fit.
Yeah. Oh, that's very telling.
One of the things I considered the other day is him in his position at work would be in charge of administering pain relief and associated drugs. I think we refer to them as either grey or red level drugs, but West Australia might be different, where they are accountable. Now, have those records been checked and cross-referenced to make sure they're all quality or quantity of, because he would be in that position where he can stockpile associated drugs to perhaps make somebody forget, make somebody go to sleep, incapacitate, and very quite easily because of his training and his knowledge. So it's something that, again, something that may have been overlooked. We probably don't know, but it's not too late to go back through those records.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, it was clear as well in the texts and emails between Ray and Graeme in the weeks leading up to the trip, where Ray had put a lot of trust in Graeme, and like literally said in black and white, "Well, we're not going down the holes without you anyway."
And you know, like the people treat other people how they are themselves. So you could look at Ray and Jennie's, you know, not realising perhaps some malevolence or whatever from Milne, but that's because they didn't possess it. You know, like they just didn't see that. You know, just didn't see it coming, and have probably never experienced it. I know Ray's never. You know, it's not like he's ever been subjected to any evil before, so he probably just didn't see it coming, and put his trust in someone based on their resume, essentially, because his resume is solid. He's an ESO. He's a, you know, what's he got on his stickers? Snake wrangler and fucking all sorts of things. So yeah.
Was Graeme always only coming for a couple of nights? That was always the case. Okay.
Are you sure? That's just what, again, so that's what he's...
But that's what he said.
That's what he said.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Later.
However, he said that Ray and Jennie had 10 days off?
They told their kids that they'd be out offline for 10 days. Right. So again, that one's a really unknown.
Okay.
So it's an unknown. But I mean...
But yeah, I guess what I was getting to is there a chance he came out here, there was an accident, and he thought, I'm the safety guy, I'm responsible, I got to hide this, and maybe it's just me trying to make sense of this situation, going, it had to be an accident, because how could somebody be that diabolical that they would plan this months ahead and then pull it off and then, I don't know, try and make it look like an accident? I don't know.
I know exactly what you mean, because probably 10 years ago I thought the same. You know, look, my initial thoughts were probably that. Oh, it was, you know, something went pear-shaped and there was a cover-up, or there was an argument around the campfire and something went pear-shaped and we covered that up. But, I mean, trust me, after 10 years of hearing every intricate little detail, no, it was planned, it was premeditated. And you have to get your head around that. Like, this Ray and Jennie's deaths were horrendous. Like, it is a literal horror story. It really is. And it's taken me probably 8 years to get my head around it. It was once that finding that stuff in that hole was like the final jigsaw puzzle, you know, jigsaw puzzle piece. You have all the bits and pieces of information, and maybe there's a part of you wants to deny it because it's too hard to believe. But once you get the full picture of what happened up here, and whether, you know, like, and I am purely talking from what I know, and not, you know, like I'm sure the DPP and the police would absolutely tear me a new one for my own opinions on it. But I'm sure they get it as well, and like I said before, there's plenty of people that I've spoken to get it as well. This was an absolute worst case horror story up here. It really was. You know, they were lured up here, murdered, and God knows what else, you know. When this all kicked off, you go, what's the worst case scenario, so that you can work on that, and then, it won't be, like once it's all solved, it's okay. You've already got in your head what the worst case scenario is. Yeah. But in this case, or in Ray and Jennie's, what's happened up here, when I did that probably 9 years ago, I wasn't even fucking close. I really wasn't. I wasn't prepared for what actually happened up here. And I don't think, I'll ever get my head around it, but it was just, horrendous. Absolutely horrendous.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to talk to this at all, Rick, because I'll probably talk to the Paynes Fine crew about it. But I guess you could use it as an example, maybe, because it's the first time I've heard of it. You're talking about a potential site where around the time of this occurrence was burnt down and hasn't been searched since. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
I guess there's two ways to calculate if that's possible. Either one, calculate the time frame in which he allegedly, he claims he drove, Sandstone, Mount Magnet, Paynes Fine, or straight down the dirt to Paynes Fine. There is a time difference, and with that you can proceed south of Paynes Fine Road to a few tracks. You and me to Lake Barley, for example, and you drive down there 60 kilometres to where one of the locals about that time found what appeared to be an old abandoned station out camp. And that same person went back there a short time later, a couple of weeks later, a month later, to find it burnt down. Unexplained, it wasn't inhabited. So that to me is a coincidence, potentially in the same time frame that you have two people going missing, later to be found, one of them murdered, the other one still remains missing. That you would think.
And that fire was just in that one spot, right?
It was only the house, yeah. It wasn't a bushfire or anything like that. It was. I went there and had a look, and I'm not an arsonist. I'm not an arson detective or whoever they're called, but should it be looked at? To me, if it's in the search area and it suits the time frame, it should be looked at.
And they have. Oh, sorry, I'll grab that back. They have brought, I assume, in the initial cadaver dogs out.
No, on the first day they brought in a police dog from Geraldton, or PD Bucky, I think was the police dog's name, PD Bucky. But PD Bucky was more akin to attacking meth heads and stuff like that than no. But they brought a dog in, but clearly I don't know, they didn't go far enough, because I'm sure if PD Bucky had to put a snout over the whole 1.8 kilometres that way, she would have, I'm assuming it's a girl, sorry, PD Bucky would have picked up on the scent. Yeah. So I know that they took it around the quad bike, obviously around the camp area, but possibly not that far north.
Yeah. No, and I guess as well, the value of coming out here, I was just, blown away even by the amount of shafts in that immediate area where you guys aren't even sure if they've been really, really checked. And to me, and again, it's only speculation, but if you get rid of one body in a particular way that's quite effective, it's a ready-made big hole where it's not likely to be found anytime soon. Why wouldn't you do that with both?
But there's no point in a defeatist attitude either. You can't just give up, because then, Another thing we were saying today, it's as important to know where she isn't, because then you tick another box off. You just keep tick, 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 and sooner or later,
If she was found, what are we expecting to find at a decade's getting?
Well, that's a good question, and look, gauging by gauging by the state of the material of the shirt that was located 8 years, if Jenny's boots, which I believe are leather with potentially plastic caps, work boots being a hard plastic cap, I wouldn't expect them to be steel caps prospecting. They would still be nearly like still in good condition. Well, not good condition, but still recognisable. As for Jenny, I don't know what the minerals are up here. I don't know what the natural decomposition rate would be in this area. But I do think that she would still be recognisable as for an anthropologist to, yep, that's Jenny, or that's human.
Yeah, okay. So it's not like, because driving up here, and again, sorry for being frank, there's a lot of bones on the side of the road. Sorry. Yeah, driving up here, there's a lot of bones on the side of the road and a lot of, what are the big, if they're eagles or the vultures going at them. So yeah, it just got me to thinking, and I know it's not a nice thought, but would there actually be much left? And I guess it depends where she is, but...
I've spoken to, so the Walloona guys in particular, so they work in this region, and they've actually done, because it's a similar sort of area as far as the landscape and I guess the climate and all that sort of thing, and they've done missing persons stuff over the years and come across remains. Not in the sense of foul play, just missing people. So up here, there's no wild pigs. There's dogs. There's wild dogs, and there's bungarras, goannas, sand goannas, bungarras, and they're the main higher predators, and both of those do not crush bone. So even if there's been predation, there'll still be, the main. Jesus, this is going to sound fucking horrendous, isn't it? But that's the reality. Even if the main skeletal structure, it might be scattered, but there'll still be the predominant bones, i.e., skull, jaw, pelvis.
Yeah, the evidence is there. I mean, 8 years. The collar of Ray's shirt, which was the main component of the shirt that I grabbed, the tag was still readable, and the collar and the buttons were still in stitching. So there is, even her clothes, if she's got jeans, work pants, they would still be probably in the same state as the shirt was.
Is the working thesis like that Graeme got rid of any of the roping and abseiling gear, was probably disposed of at the same time, so could still be out here, or that could be anywhere? You'd probably save that to do at the local dump or something when you get back, would be my guess, but I'm no expert.
No, that's one of the things I was thinking. So the first week of my search area was actually down at the 1017 location, down at Payne's Fine, and I was thinking that maybe that's where he has potentially buried something that he could possibly come back up and get quite easily, because he's potentially going past to Kew, Meekatharra. But yeah, that's those items that would be needed to descend, rope, carabiners, harnesses, all that kind of stuff, is not something you would throw in a public garbage bin potentially at a rest area on your drive home. It's something that you would potentially make sure it's well and truly gotten rid of, that nobody's just going to stumble across. In saying that, if it's metallic, you're not going to bury it in a prospecting area.
Yeah, true.
Because it will be found quicker than,
It's more than likely.
Or if you work in an environment where you use that equipment, you just do a swapsy. You just give it a bit of a clean up, go to work, carabiner, and no one's the wiser. The one with the forensic evidence has probably been back in service for 10 years.
And that's all it takes is a different thought process or something from your past experience or something that you've heard somewhere else in life. And that's the same as me. Like that disturbed earth was something that I studied in Iraq for 6 months because every chunk of disturbed earth could be a potential IED.
Yeah.
And I seen it quicker than I seen it straight away.
So it jumps out.
Yeah. But to Dave, he's just like, oh, why didn't we see that? But they weren't looking, and which is understandable.
And this probably just something that came to mind that you're probably aware of, but maybe not. So I'll just throw it out there. When I looked up, I noticed in the somewhere in the, I think it was in the coroner's report, there was Milne's rego for his trailer.
Yep. Oh, for the
trailer that he had on this trip, apparently. And it was just interesting to me because I looked up the rego and it, so April 2015, it's been unregistered since then. So whether he sold it or it's never been registered again since the month after the incident.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that is very interesting.
Yeah, no, that was a little one that jumped out to me. And then, I mean, and on that note, just to clarify, because it did my head in, when I saw the news footage of, is it who drove the cars back with Jim and Brittany, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jim.
And there's footage of them, and I feel like it was only, I mean, you could tell me the dates, but they're literally driving the evidence out of town under the instruction of the police. Like none of that, there was so much potential it was a crime scene and it was driven away back home, and then I don't know, they looked at it months later or...
That's a perfect description. It was driven away under, how did she put it? Under the remember that one? Under instruction of WA police, it was driven away from the crime scene. That's the perfect way to put it, because that is exactly what happened. They didn't come up. So all the gear that was here, it was taken back to Perth. All of the camp gear was taken back to their property in Beverley. A lot of the personal possessions were taken to the Keegan's property. So I can't say for sure about the personal possessions, but I know that the camp equipment was taken back to Beverley and just put in a shed and was used, not all of it, but, like the quad bike in particular was used for a good couple of months out on the property. Some of the other gear, they didn't come up and actually seize any of that equipment and do proper forensics on it until, and I'm guessing here, it was probably about August or September of 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And good stuff.
There's an interesting, or not funny, but, like it's an interesting story with that quad bike. So when they finally took it in for proper forensic testing, by that stage, probably a dozen people had used it out on the farm. So anyone that had their fingerprints on that quad bike that had a record were contacted and asked for their, essentially where were they on March 19 to 22, 2015, including one of, let's say, a extended family member who had a criminal conviction, who'd been out to the farm and had used the quad bike. And it's like, so there you go. How many people had their fingerprints and all that all over that quad bike for months after the fact? Yeah. So contamination of evidence it was rife.